Good morning. In my second lesson for the morning, I want to discuss a grammar problem that a few people are having on the Odyssey lessons, and that has to do with the comparative and superlative forms of adverbs and adjectives. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk about those two forms, and then I'm also going to post on our Google Classroom a video about comparative and superlative adverbs and adjectives for you to watch on YouTube. So let me share my screen, and I'm going to start by showing you the actual question from Odyssey that is giving people difficulty. The actual question that people are having a hard time with is explain the difference between the superlative and comparative degree. So here's what I'm looking for when you answer this type of question. I'm going to go ahead and share my whiteboard. I want to know a couple things. First of all, when I use the comparative form, how many things am I comparing? And the answer is 2. When I use the superlative form, how many things am I comparing? Well, when I use a superlative form, I am comparing 3 or more things. So when I'm only talking about 2 things, I'm going to use the comparative form. When I'm talking about 3 or more things, I'm going to use the superlative form. The second thing I'm looking for is how do the adjectives or adverbs change when I use these forms? So the first thing that's important to remember is an adjective is a word that describes a noun, and an adverb is a word that describes a verb. So in the comparative form, when I'm talking about 2 things, and I want to talk about how tall they are, if I'm just talking about one thing, I would say the boy is tall. But if I want to compare that boy to another boy, I will then add an ER ending. The boy is taller than, so notice first of all, I added an ER ending. And second of all, I used the word than, which shows I'm making a comparison. So the boy is taller than, oops, excuse me, let me get back in that box. The boy is taller than his brother. So I put an ER ending on the end of the word. In some cases, you have to use more in front of it. So I add more in front. I do that typically in 2 situations. I do that if I have a long adjective or if I'm using an adverb. So if I use the word interesting, I'm going to, because it's a longer adjective, I'm going to use more in front of it. So I would say my new book is more interesting than my old one. Okay, so again, what did I do? I added more in front of my adjective, interesting, and then I added than to show the comparison. This also happens when I write a sentence that has an adverb in it, and a lot of adverbs, remember, end with ly. So when I use an adverb like quickly, the rabbit ran more quickly than the turtle. Okay, so again, here's my more, here's my than, in the middle is my adverb that I used to describe how fast the rabbit ran. When I go on to the superlative form, Now I'm going to, first let me underline a couple important things up here. Comparative form is two things. Sorry, my cat is joining me for the lesson. It's the beauty of live recording. So two things, I could have an ER ending, or I could add more in front of it. Superlative form is when I'm comparing three or more things. There's only some slight changes. My slight changes here are, instead of adding ER as an ending, I'm going to add EST. I'm going to use that same sentence, but just change it so I'm talking about more than two people. The boy is the tallest student in the class. So now I'm talking about a big group of people. I'm using an EST ending. Okay, I'm using an EST ending to show that I'm talking about three or more things, three or more. Sometimes I can also use, instead of more in front of it, I'm now going to add most in front. Again, when am I going to use that? I'm going to use that with longer adjectives, and I'm going to use it with adverbs that end in ly. So if I go back to my sentence from the top, the rabbit let me do the book one. The new book was the most interesting book I have ever read. So I am talking about a big group of books, and I have added in most interesting, most to talk about a big amount, more than three or more things that I'm comparing. I'm adding the word most. Okay. So comparative form, comparing two things using ER or more. Superlative form, comparing three or more things using an EST ending or using most. So how do I answer that question? On my quiz, I say the comparative form compares two things, while the superlative compares three or more. Comparative uses ER or more. Superlative uses EST or most. Hopefully this video will help you a little bit with the comparative and superlative forms of adverbs and adjectives. Again, I will post a YouTube video also with a little bit more help on our Google Classroom. So stay tuned for that, and good luck. Thank you so much.